Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on B2B e-invoicing mandates. If we can just wait a few minutes for some people to join, we'll kickstart in 2 or 3 minutes or so. Thanks. All right, thank you everyone for waiting. I think we'll kick off. We have a lot of countries to get through and not a lot of time. So once again, thank you very much for joining us for the webinar today. We're talking on B2B e-invoicing mandates with highlights of some of the upcoming mandates and what they entail. Apologies, I am not Simon Geach. My name is Julian Lapp. I'm the Head of Regulatory Affairs at Easy. Unfortunately, Simon is attending a conference today and had some travel issues and was not able to join. With me on the webinar today is Sinead Bread, one of our research associates. She'll be presenting on a few of these countries that she is an expert in, and then I will do a wrap up of some further countries as well. Handing over to maybe before we start, just a brief overview of that IT and Easy. Easy is an e-invoicing provider with many global accreditations and registrations. We provide e-invoicing services in over 80 countries and certainly VAT reclaim and indirect tax services in many, many more. We are present in over 60 countries. We assist with over 100 jurisdictions globally, and even including our new US sales tax services as well. All right, handing over to Danae for the UAE.
Hello everyone, it's lovely to meet all of you, or meet all of you. I'm going to jump straight into the UAE. We've received a lot of questions regarding this mandate, this large imposing mandate in the Middle East. So let's just start off with the go live date being set for the 1st of January 2027. This is not the only important date to take note of. There is preparatory dates or deadlines prior to this, where there are 2 specific requirements. The first being the requirement to appoint an accredited service provider, and the second being to comply with the e-invoicing mandate. This has been split between large taxpayers or small and medium taxpayers. So there are different compliance dates regarding that, which we'll run through now. We've created a slide where we've done a nice timeline for that. The UAE will be utilizing the People Network with its own point format. And most importantly, to highlight here is the imposing penalties for non-compliance with these two requirements, i.e. not appointing a accredited service provider by the stipulated deadline under which threshold you fall, and then for non-compliance with the e-invoicing system itself or not implementing it in due course, as well as missing e-invoices or transactions that have not been filed or sent in the correct format. I've highlighted those penalties here, and I've also converted them into in euros. However, they might seem small if it's one invoice, but an exponential large entities or large volume entities, this could grow exponentially and cause quite a hefty penalty. Let's move on to this lovely timeline. So as stipulated and as I've stated, this started around July 2026 of this year. Well, is going to start around July 2026 of this year. So they've implemented a voluntary phase where you could participate in this if you want to. And there was a few entities or large taxpayers that were specified to participate in the pilot phase. All of this happening around this July period. Also, very important to note, the previous date that was stated to comply with the appointment of ASP for large taxpayers has now been extended to October of 2026. The previous date was to be the 31st of July, I believe, and now they've extended that for our large taxpayers. And in that regard, I would like to just highlight that large taxpayers, the threshold is stipulated, as you'll note on our slides, but I will reiterate, this is for companies with a business revenue equal to or larger than 50 million AED. Also very important to note in this that this revenue is also not just based on actual revenue, but projected revenue. So this could impose the obligation on the newly incorporated entities in the UAE. Then, as I said, the go live date stipulated for large companies to comply with this mandate or this e-invoicing mandate would then be January 1st of 2027. Then with the second wave of industries being hit, your small and medium enterprises, your SMEs, will be affected from the 31st of March, where they will have to appoint an accredited service provider by this date. This will be any entity with a revenue under or below 50 million AED. Then the mandate then from the 1st of July for these SMEs will be obligatory. They will then have to comply with the e-invoicing mandate in the UAE. And then from the 1st of October, this will be a full in-scope mandate then, where your government entities will now have to also comply with this. I would also just like to stipulate that B2C transactions have been specifically excluded from this mandate. However, this could change in future. We have no updates on that regard, but to our knowledge now, it's been excluded. I'm going to start with another, if there are any questions, I just wanted to reiterate that we are going through this information quite quickly. So if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the question box. I'm going to hop on to another Middle Eastern country. Let's run to Oman. This is a bit more imposing as the date is already set for August of 2026. They're going to break their rollout into 4 phases. It's going to be a pilot phase, a expansion phase, an SME onboarding phase, and then the full compliance mandate. We will run through the specific dates that have been provided. In due course, I've also created a slide in that respect, just so that we can look at the timeline and see how it affects different parties. The Oman will also be following a similar but not identical structure to the UAE in respect of their e-invoicing implementation. They're also utilizing the PayPal network in this regard. They also have their own kind format that they will be utilizing. I've also, for interest's sake, also added a little link to our slides here, where I think it's the 4th point, where it's a link that you can actually see where you will fall within these phases. You can utilize your Omani tax ID and complete this online, and it will actually specify under which phase you will be falling. Also, very important to reiterate again, this is not, the tax office is not just doing this for fun. There are penalties involved in non-compliance, and I've stipulated them in the slides as well, wherein fines can range between 500 to 5,000 Omani Real. I've also quickly did the exchange to euros just so we can see how it could impact global businesses. And in severe cases or in repeat offence cases, the Omani Tax Authority has the authority to potentially suspend business activities, which is nothing any of the businesses want. Running on to the timeline, the most important part. So as I've mentioned, there will be 4 phases specifically. The first starts in August 2026. This phase has been indicated, and we actually have received a bit of feedback from clients where they have been selected to participate in this pilot phase. According to the Omani Tax Authority, they have selected plus or minus 100 large taxpayers. They haven't specified the exact criteria they've utilized. We can only assume that this is based on revenue threshold, company volumes, and technical readiness in participating in this. But we have received feedback from clients who have been selected for this process. So we can only assume that this is a specified date this is going to happen. Phase 2 is just the expansion where medium and other large entities will now have to comply with this. This is stipulated for February 2027 of next year. Then the further rollout, phase 3, we will be including more taxpayers under this obligation, with SMEs having to adopt e-invoicing as well. This is stipulated to happen around August 2027. And then the 4th and final phase being that all VAT registered entities will have to comply with this mandate. We have seen information stating that it's in 2028, but the tax office has not confirmed this yet, and most of their documentation still read to be confirmed. However, we can see from the timeline and the stipulated dates, if things go according to plan and the rollout functions well, we can only assume it's going to be February 2028. Now that we've locked down some of the Middle Eastern mandates, I'm going to move on to, I've also created a slide just to explain the 5-corner model that will be utilized by Oman and by the UAE as well, where you will have to, so in the UAE's instance, you'll have to appoint an accredited provider to act as your access points in this flow. And similar to Oman, the structure will follow the same, where you'll have to appoint or utilize an access point or certified access point in order to exchange your data with the tax authority and with your end recipients. Now I will be moving on to the next country. I'll be moving on to Slovakia. Slovakia is also rolling out in January of 2027. It seems like this is going to be a big year for e-invoicing rollouts. And a lot of countries are starting to implement more and more rules and technical requirements regarding this. So having an e-invoicing provider assist you with this will be very helpful. The mandate in Slovakia affects your domestic VAT-registered businesses. For now, foreign VAT-registered businesses have been excluded from this rollout, this mandate rollout between 2027 and 2030. The 2030 mandate or intended mandate will be a bookkeeping mandate. This is very similar to the structure that Denmark follows as well, where it imposes a mandate to use a specific digital accounting system or accounting structure. But this will only find out later more information from closer to 2030. Slovakia will also be utilizing the PayPal network, but they will be utilizing a PayPal-based format in this regard instead of a PINE format like Oman and the UAE. And I have very, very, very important news to share. We have now recently been certified as an e-invoicing provider, or as they would refer to it as a digital postman in Slovakia. I've also included a little the link to this list, as well as a little snippet of our entity that we have registered as a certified e-invoicing provider. I think that's, in regards to the penalties for Slovakia, they haven't released a lot of information, but we can only assume that financial penalties will still find application in the e-invoicing scope. But now I will hand over to my colleague who is way more experienced with most of these regions, Julian.
Sure. Thank you very much, Danae. The next set of regions are maybe a little bit more established in their e-invoicing requirements and or have some interesting ones. We're going to start with Germany. Germany currently has an e-invoicing mandate, which we refer to as a reverse mandate, requiring all businesses to be able to receive an e-invoice, not necessarily to send an e-invoice yet. However, from the 1st of January, large businesses with a turnover over 800,000 euros will also be required to send e-invoices. The authorities in Germany have not mandated a specific format or transmission method for their e-invoices, other than saying that they at least need to meet the EU minimum norm, which is EN 16931. This means that there are multiple formats that can be sent and received in Germany and multiple methods with which to send them. What this practically means for companies is having an established and experienced service provider in the region is extremely important in order to manage the complexity that can occur in Germany. We've listed a few of the accepted formats here. Some of them are based on the PEPL standard, being PEPL BIS Billing 3, as well as the Ex-Rechnung standard. However, standards like Zugfad, which is a hybrid invoicing format, it's a PDF with an embedded XML file within it, are also acceptable. The rollout is going to, as we said, affect large businesses from the 1st of January 2027, with remaining established businesses in scope from 2028. There are, of course, penalties applicable in Germany as well that can be relatively severe, especially as they're not linked to invoice value or anything along those lines, and range from at least 5,000 euros to 25,000 euros. As discussed, this is the timeline that's been implemented. I believe most entities within Germany will have at least some method of receiving an e-invoice currently. The current requirement is that they at least provide an email address dedicated to receiving e-invoices. What we've seen in practice is that many companies receive structured data invoices, which are machine readable but not human readable, being received by email. There's also no validation possible and very lax security possible through email methods. So our advice with Germany, as with any other country, is obviously to contact a service provider that's registered in the area and ensure you are compliant. In this case, Easy is able to support all of the formats possible in Germany. Moving on to Norway. Norway has made some announcements of their intention to mandate B2B e-invoicing for residents. It is still not formally adopted, but they have indicated their desire to go ahead with e-invoicing, an e-invoicing mandate from the 1st of January 2027. There are also no defined formats for Norway further than their local format EHF Billing 3.0, which is also primarily based on PEPL formats as well. There is currently a B2G mandate in place, and it will likely be an extension of the same mandate in terms of the format and transmission methods used. They are also introducing, we'll get onto the dates in a second, but a bookkeeping requirement similar to Denmark, where each company must at least have the ability to send or receive within the mandated formats and transmission methods through their accounting systems, e-invoices for Norway. There are no penalties that have been released yet. We are indeed awaiting formal announcements and a lot more technical information for Norway, but we believe that there will obviously be penalties applicable here. The Nordics are an interesting region when it comes to e-invoicing, with a lot of voluntary uptake for e-invoicing. Even outside of B2G requirements, many companies utilize B2B e-invoicing already. So we may see some penalties or a more incentivized approach, allowing companies to claim additional VAT or something along those lines, potentially as well. So this mandate, as I said, kicks in most likely from January 2027, while we await further confirmation. That is the mandate to send and receive e-invoices for B2B transactions. The digital accounting mandate also will likely kick in from January 2030. But again, we are waiting some formal detail there as well. Moving on to Spain, we're going to quickly discuss the Verifactu mandate, but Spain is a much larger, or has a much larger digital transformation framework in place at the moment. Firstly, Verifactu is a mandate that was meant to be going live at the beginning of this year. It was subsequently postponed until the 1st of January 2027. Because of this postponement, I do not think there will be another one. Basically, there were concerns regarding system readiness for a lot of taxpayers and service providers for the January 2026 date. But for January 2027, we are likely to see this go ahead. Verifactu is an invoice reporting mandate where invoices are required to be reported to the tax office and be verified by the tax office in parallel to being sent to the end recipients. It operates in conjunction with the SII mandate, which has been in place for a few years. When I say in conjunction, what I mean is that companies that are required to comply with SII are not required to comply with Verifactu, and vice versa. Companies that are not required to comply under SII will be required to comply with Verifactu from the 1st of January 2027. On to, just while we're discussing SII, this is another reporting method that the tax office has imposed. It is closer to a periodic reporting requirement where invoice data is required to be reported to the tax office every 4 days. It is not per invoice as much, but it is still near real time, is what we'll say. Easy will be able to support both, well, already does support SII and is actually already accredited for Verifactu as well, and will be able to support everyone from the 1st of January. There are significant penalties here for non-compliance with the Verifactu mandate, as well as the SII mandate as well, ranging, as we see, from sort of 50,000 euros or so per financial year up to 150,000 euros. So really significant penalties that are applicable for the Verifactu mandate and the SII mandate. Another thing worth mentioning is the upcoming B2B e-invoicing mandate, or the Krece law that has been now finally passed into law. This was something that we've been eagerly awaiting for a few years since the draft was released in 2024, if I remember correctly. It has now been signed into law, and basically businesses from the 1st of October 2027 must comply with B2B e-invoicing in Spain. We haven't received a huge amount of detail of what that system will look like, other than it seems to be a similar, or at least proposed system, it seems to be similar to France, where businesses will be required to have an accredited provider in order to facilitate their e-invoicing needs. There will be no free platform via the Spanish authorities, and everyone will basically need to sign with a service provider similar to also obviously the UAE, Oman as well. So this is coming up from October 2027. As soon as we have more details, these will obviously be released to the public. We are eagerly anticipating this and will obviously be ready by the time the mandate kicks in for B2B e-invoicing in Spain. Here are some timelines for the Verifactu and the SII mandate. As we see, SII has been in place since 2017. Verifactu, as we discussed, will be in place from January 2027 after its initial delay. And B2B e-invoicing will be in place from October 2027. Another thing worth mentioning is that B2B e-invoicing seems like it will be distinct from the SII and Verifactu requirements, meaning companies will likely need to comply with at least e-invoicing and one of Verifactu or SII from October 2027. We then move on to Estonia, which has announced a full e-invoicing mandate from 2027 for all VAT-registered businesses for B2B transactions. Currently, Estonia operates an interesting reverse mandate where companies can register as recipients of e-invoices through the tax office system. And if they have done so, they can demand an e-invoice from their suppliers. it is a very interesting system. We have seen some interesting situations come about because of this. But I think to remove a lot of the complexity, the Estonians have now introduced a full mandate from 2027 for businesses to send e-invoices. This will be applicable to all VAT registered businesses, regardless of their establishment status. So even foreign non-established VAT registered businesses must comply. And there will definitely be penalties in place for 2027, but we do not have a lot of detail yet, as with a few of these countries that are leaving it to the last minute to announce some of their details. The system in Estonia will likely be something similar to Croatia, or following a PEPL-like mandate, but not directly using PEPL. The invoice format will be EN 16931 compliance, so the normal European norm, and will be defined in XML as well in all likelihood. Okay, and then we have France as well. We were thinking of discussing this as an additional slide in this webinar. However, France as a mandate is extremely complex, and we've actually decided to dedicate an entire webinar just to speaking on France. I'll give some very brief highlights before we move to our Q&A, in that France is introducing e-invoicing and e-reporting mandate from the 1st of September this year. The mandate and implementation for the sending of e-invoices will be based on company size. However, every company that is established in France will need to be able to receive e-invoices from September this year. What that practically means is that every company will also need to sign with an accredited platform agréé or service provider in France before the mandate kicks in. And due to the complexity, we'd certainly suggest starting those conversations as early as possible to ensure your system readiness, as well as your compliance with the various and very specific definitions that France has provided. Easy, once again, is an accredited platform agréé in France. And obviously, if you're free to reach out to us to get some more detail on the upcoming mandate and your compliance needs. We'll now move on to a quick Q&A. I see we only have 2 minutes, very briefly now. I also just want to mention that, again, on all of these countries, we are either already accredited or in the final stages of accreditation. There are, as Danae mentioned, a lot of mandates that are coming into place from 2027. And basically, we are 6 months out from many of them, if not less. It is important to ensure that you have assessed your e-invoicing needs and reach out to a service provider, preferably us, as early as possible. Integrations do take time. It's important to understand exactly what's needed in terms of your processes and your systems, and how we can combine those with our integrations and our portal to ensure your compliance. I'll very quickly check if we have any questions, although it doesn't seem like it for today, which means we'll end on time, thankfully. The questions portal and this the webinar will be available after the session has ended. Feel free to drop questions in even after the session has ended. We can see those questions and we can answer them. If we do receive questions, we will provide an email with our answers in writing, just for everyone's benefit, especially if it's relevant to more than one company or taxpayer. That's it from my side. We do certainly appreciate everyone joining, and we look forward to seeing you again. Please don't forget to register for our France webinar. The link is provided in our slide deck as well. And yeah, thank you very much for today.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one. Bye.